Thank you to our sponsors, Little Voices. Are you a teacher with a passion for drama, music and performance, or feeling stuck in the classroom? Little Voices gives you the chance to step into a role where you can truly inspire young minds through the arts. This is a company I know well and admire. They're passionate about child development, highly rated and genuinely transformative. With small group teaching, a focus on confidence and creativity, with the opportunity to guide children through Lambda qualifications, you can make a real impact. Plus, with the support of a nationwide franchise network behind you, you can run your own successful business, doing what you love while teaching in a way that truly fits your life. Hello, and welcome to the Pit Pony podcast with myself, Sharon Corley,
and me, Sarah Dunwood,
in which we talk to teachers from all walks of life who exited the classroom from what they thought was a job for life and thrived on the other side of teaching. Coming up in this episode... Yeah, well, I was surprised you turned up on time for the briefing at 8:30. Sorry, what did you say? Pardon, can you say that again? And you'll find that the glib confidence with which they put you down, when you say, pardon, can you say that again? They never deliver it the second time with the same level of confidence, and they go, oh, I was only joking. I just meant, no, what did you say? You can start to put people right back in that transactional confidence of adult to adult communication. Something as simple as, I am stopping you in your tracks and simply asking you to repeat what you said. And if you start to do that when it happens again, you retrain them.
Hello, listeners. This is the second in a sequence of special episodes. So today we are focusing on the key topic of our group, which is what happens if I think I'm being bullied. So I will bring in my good friend, Lady Sharon Corley, who's now going to laugh.
Hello. Yeah. What if I think I'm being bullied? That is one of the biggest themes and threads that not only comes out in our group, Sarah, but in our Pit Pony podcasts with our guests. That turning point. The reason we do the podcast in the format we do with our guests is because we wanted it to act as an antidote to a lot of the posts within the group. So we interview teachers who've left the classroom, and the structure was really, really simple. I give a little bit about their history. We introduce them. They say what they're doing now. And then we start at the end of their career. What was the critical moment? What was happening at the time you were exiting the classroom? And 9 times out of 10, it comes down to the point where something, I'm going to use the language, something changed. I felt there was a sea change. I felt targeted. I didn't quite know what it was. But they take us back to the point, and it sits around that topic of bullying in the workplace. There's not a hard and fast definition for it. It can be different things for different people. There can be reasons and different motivations that sit behind bullying, but it is fundamentally, there's a generic thread that runs through this idea of being bullied. I don't feel safe anymore in the workplace.
Yeah, psychological safety in the workplace. I think for me as well, sometimes we're going to go all over the place with this, I think, but I think sometimes people don't realize how long it's been going on for until they're out of it and start to reflect back. And even this week, you and I have had a conversation where I've actually said to you, I actually now can go back to kind of 5 years before I left and now start to recognize some things that weren't right. Doesn't mean that I was being bullied or anything of that nature, but I can recognize things that weren't right at the time, but I didn't recognize it at the time.
I always think it's like, an old style volume button on a radio. It starts in some ways in your head as a whisper feeling. There's like, and there's this soft voice in your head that second guesses, wonder what that was about. She seemed to pick a coffee cup up and quick and exit when I sat down. Or, he didn't message me the way we've messaged before. Or there's something, and it starts with a very gentle but uneasy whispering within you. And if you ignore it, if you dismiss it, which we do naturally as human beings, we look for the right and the good, and I'm overthinking and that kind of thing. I'm tired. The volume goes up a bit, and then it goes up a bit more and up a bit more to the point where it is shouting out loud that what's going on in your workplace, all of these little signs, we might call them red flags, whatever the terminology is of the day, things are happening that didn't happen before that's making you feel unsafe, anxious, nervous, paranoid. All of those emotions that sit around people's behaviours are changing towards me and around me. And this doesn't feel right. And that's the stage where you can justifiably ask the question, am I being bullied? I think I'm being bullied.
Can I ask you a question from your experience with supporting group members? What you think, I'll put you on the spot for a change instead of you putting me on the spot. Top 5 low level red flags that by themselves you don't necessarily go, but what are the top 5 things that are, people are coming to us with going, this doesn't feel right, or this is happening, or whatever?
It's to do with communication. A lot of it is how you're communicated with. Very often it can start with emails. Email tones change with colleagues. Okay? So they've been in a swim lane and they've been in a communication channel, and then all of a sudden there's a curtness, there's a formality, there's a change within written communication. The staff room. If you still have a staff room, or if you have some kind of communal area in which you are interacting and connecting with staff, there's an atmospheric change outside of the classroom. There is a tonal change in the way in which you are spoken to. Someone's popped into your room, and so it could be emails, the staff room, someone's come into your space, and the way they are communicating with you feels that it's gone from this informality to quite formal and critical. It can be in meetings. I've been shut down. Things are not right. So the main thread that runs with it is when relationships have changed with people who you've been in a previous swim lane with. It's typical that the room went quiet when I walked in. It's those kind of signalings. It's looking for changes in interactions with people. Now, let me make this clear, because I can't necessarily give you a concrete top 5 in terms of behaviours, but there's one thing I can tell you. You can be bullied by a head teacher, a deputy head, a job share, a TA. My experience of bullying within schools is it's not top to bottom down. I've actually had head teachers who are being bullied by their SLT. It's a toxic trait, and its characteristics with the individuals within which you are spending floor space with.
I think that's so important that it isn't just seen as a top down in terms of the hierarchy, because you and I both know that we have dealt with supported so many people where it's come actually from beneath. I don't mean this in that way, but in terms of a hierarchy from people below the person on the hierarchy or at a different level from them on the hierarchy. And I think it goes to that thing, doesn't it, of it's not all SLT. It's not all middle leaders. It's not all this. It's not. It can happen to anybody at any stage of their career, at any level. It can happen.
And it's not always on one-on-one.
Yeah.
Bullying can come with cliques.
Yeah.
It can come when there's been departmental changes. We talked about the mean girl culture. When there are a group of people who are excluding you. It can come at different times in your career. You've come back from maternity leave and things have changed. You've had sickness and things have changed. There's not a one size fits all where this is concerned. So it's not necessarily one-on-one. It's not due to an authoritative-based infrastructure. It's to do with communication, and it's to do fundamentally the bottom line. And we're going to talk about strategies for capturing and empowering yourself. But I think I'm being bullied. My go-to position with a member of that group is not what's happening, because what's happening is actually secondary in this. How are you feeling? Because if you can try and capture how you're feeling, I feel as though my confidence is waning. I'm second guessing myself in decisions I'm making. I'm feeling anxious at night. I'm nervous going through the school gates in the morning. My knees lock when I see a certain person on the corridor. That's the starting point.
Yeah.
And I being bullied starts with you checking in with yourself emotionally. Brief interlude, dear listener. Couple of questions. Are you a tutor or even a pit pony considering tutoring? And do you fancy getting in the room with myself and Sarah Dunwood, learning about the wonderful world of tuition? Then why not join us at the National Tutors Conference, hosted by Connexus Tuition, on the 29th of July 2025. It's at Chesford Grange, Kenilworth. The links to the tickets are in the show notes below, and we will both see you on the other side.
And I think that's so important, because I don't believe a lot of people trust their own intuition and trust. You and I talk about our gut feeling all of the time, and mine's right about 80% of the time. Yours is about 95% of the time. You're really tuned into it. And I think that's where you and I work really well, because I'll give a different perspective, or you'll go, actually, no, Sarah, you're missing something here. But people don't tune into it, partly because they're so blimmin' busy on the hamster wheel, to use a cliche, of what it is like to work in a school or another environment. It doesn't need to be school, but you're doing 5 hours a day teaching. You've got everything else that's going on with it. Actually, who's got the time to really check in with how they are feeling? You sit on the sofa at night with a glass of wine and a packet of crisps and a bar of chocolate, and you're exhausted, you're numb, you know you don't feel right, but you don't actually give yourself the space to really be analytical about why that is and what that is.
And I think this is why this is such a powerful episode. You and I know in our experience of life, when you are blundering through and you're blind to what's happening around you, you can be being bullied in the dark, blissfully happy, because you've just not picked up on these signals and these red flags. So you're in the dark. And then all of a sudden, you are going home at the end of the night and you're feeling as though the stomach quite not right. because you're now bumping into things in the dark. And then what happens is you're coming home and you've bumped into I'm talking metaphorically, please, by the way. Please bear with me and hold on with your fingertips. But you've gone through your day in this darkness because you're being bullied, but you're bumping into obstacles and furniture and you've got a sore knee. And then all of a sudden, you start to have an awareness that something is going wrong and going on. And the light, even in a dim light, starts to go up a bit. So you start to look differently across your day. So when you're coming home with a bruise, it's because you've been ignored in the corridor. It's because that person walked out of the room. Awareness is everything. And actually, eventually what happens is there's usually a critical incident and it's bang, the big light goes on and you go, oh my God, I'm being bullied. I am being harassed. I'm being picked on here. I'm being targeted, right? If you can bring your own awareness earlier, you're not waiting till the big light goes on. You're not waiting until you're sat in a pool of anxiety on the settee at night. You've checked in earlier. And it's this kind of episode that's crucial. If something starts to give you an ick, sit with it and go, I remember that podcast episode them two women did. This is what they were talking about. Get wise and get wise quicker.
And I think there's two things here for me. Nobody goes to work, however many days a year we work, and has a work life that doesn't have challenges. Nobody has that perfect job where you bounce out of bed in the morning, you go, you love every minute of the day. There's no rub, there's no pinch points, there's no crosswords, because I mean, you and I are the perfect example of this. Sometimes you and I will have robust conversations with each other over something. She's laughing at me, listeners, you can't see that. But we will have robust conversations where we'll disagree about something and then we'll unpick and we'll figure it out and we'll circle round, and either one of us was right and one of us was wrong, or both of us were wrong, or both of us were actually right and we just needed to find the middle ground on something. But it's not a fallout, and it's just the natural rhythm of working. So I think it's really important to couch this in, yes, something might go on in the workplace where on that particular day it does, to use your metaphor, give you a bruise on your shin. And actually the internal self-reflection at that point goes, that was Sharon having a bad day. That was Sarah having a bad day. They'd had the worst class in the world, period 4, and they'd not had chance for their lunch. I completely understand.
And fundamentally, it's not about you, it's about them.
So I think that's really important, because not everything is about bullying. Not everything is about somebody coming to get you, to undermine you, whatever. But I think the difference is, for me, and I think probably it's an awareness that's come about over 5 years, because I go back to times previous where I wouldn't necessarily have been aware of this in a work environment. But there comes a point where you go, this has happened multiple times now. This feeling, the ick. Somebody in a conversation with me today said, I just can't explain it to you, but it gives me an ick. And you use that phrase a lot. When that starts to happen, and I think psychologically this is the natural order of things, something happens once, if you kind of bat it off. Something happens a second time, you go, okay, that's a bit weird.
That's the whispers.
Yeah.
There you whispers.
And then the third, the volumes come up.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's either a fourth or a trigger incident or something that makes you go, oh, hang on a minute, this ain't right. And that's a different swim lane from somebody having had a bad day in work, that then the next day they go in and it's different. And this for me is really critical, because it might be that there's a trigger incident and you've not been listening to the whispers. You've not been listening to or seeing the red flags as they've come along. But when you get to that point of awareness, of the stark awareness, there's two things to do at that point. Well, there's actually three things to do at that point, in my mind. You acknowledge what has happened in that moment, how it's making you feel, what it's bringing to your awareness about what has happened previously. You then go back and you can actually start going, okay, what have been the things that have happened previously? Where else have I felt out of kilter? How did I feel? What were the circumstances? Even if you can't pin it down to a date and a time, but what are these things that have happened along the way?
The will
Absolutely.
pattern of behaviour.
Because you can reflect back once it's 2020 vision, isn't it? It's perfect
100%.
in hindsight. So you can start to build the picture beforehand. Oh, that wasn't right. John completely blanked me on the corridor. Oh, I remember that now. This, that, and the other. I apologise to anybody I know who's called John. I'm not talking about you. I just picked a name. But then what you can do as well when you've got to awareness is you can go, right, from this point forwards, every single little thing, no matter how small or insignificant I might play it down to be in my own head, I am now keeping a log.
100%. And once you get to that stage, and you hit the nail on the head there, how little. Somebody rolling their eyes at you is not little. Somebody using barbed humour and laughing after an insult is not okay. Oh, I didn't expect you to have it in on time, let's face it. Yeah. And that smile where they're not smiling. Open up and give yourself permission to stop gaslighting yourself and excusing this behaviour. With well, they've just had a bad day. I'm being oversensitive. I'm being hypersensitive. Put yourself first. And the best way I always protect myself is I imagine I am my child. I am going in now to bat for Ellie. No, I'm not having someone roll their eyes at Ellie. No, I'm not being chuckled at in a really sinister kind of way. No, you've just diminished me in front of a colleague there, but you've passed it off as humour. You've ignored me. You are not treating me with respect as either a colleague, an employee, a job share, or whatever. And I go back down to it's not about your actions. It's about how you are making me feel. And that's valid. And that's your empowerment.
I think it's actually two things sitting alongside each other. I think the how it makes you feel is absolutely critical, but alongside that, logging what it was, when it was, who it was. Because, and I'm going to use a completely different example in a really different context, and it's really personal to me, and it's medical. So back in, since my late teens, I've really struggled at certain times of the month in terms of pain and so on and so forth, that I just, because of the way girls are brought up, we're just told that's normal, you suck it up, you crack on with it. And in my mid to late 30s, it had become debilitating, like seriously impacting my life. And every time I went to a doctor, they were like, it's just not you. It's just how it is for you. You just have to crack on with it, blah, blah, blah. So I did in 2011 and it had to be a spreadsheet. Of course it had to be a spreadsheet, but I kept a spreadsheet of every single little twinge, pain episode, symptoms, blah, blah, blah. And I did it for 6 months. And some days there were multiple logs of what had gone on during the day. When I took that to a consultant, printed out, here you go, this has been my life for the last 6 months, they immediately took me far more seriously than I'd ever been taken before, because there was a trail of evidence. And it was exactly that, how it made me feel, the fatigue, the exhaustion, I can't get up off the sofa. It's virtually impossible for me to go into work. I can't eat. I'm feeling depressed. I've got anxiety. I don't want to go out, this, that, and the other. But also the actual time, date, what the physical symptom was. And I think that for me has always been my advice with people in these situations, is do what I did to get my diagnosis of endometriosis that I was absolutely and utterly riddled with. And had I been identified 10 years earlier, completely different outcome. But do that.
You know yourself, and you've hit a brilliant, resonatable example there, right? You go in, you've worked up the courage, and the doctor sits opposite you and says, so what's the problem? There's no way you can even begin to articulate it, give a sequence of events and capture it. Going in front of your head teacher and just randomly saying, well, he rolls his eyes at me, he slams a book on the table, he's laughed at me, he's ignored me. It never, ever captures a context, the amount, the frequency, and the impact than evidence. Call it a dossier, call it a document, whatever, because it gives a context. And what also it does is it signals, you ignore this, because you can ignore and dismiss me in a conversation, where actually I've got something now in writing. So I went to my head teacher with this in writing, and I was still fobbed off. Now, as a head teacher, I'd be going, bloody hell. If that gets in the hands of the governors, if that goes to Ofsted, if that goes over my head, all of a sudden, you've done exactly that. It happened here. But if I just read out one line or just cherry picked 10 lines of that spreadsheet, it would never, ever be able to capture what was happening. And fundamentally, one of the hard things is when it's the bloody head teacher you've got to go in front of. And we can touch on whistleblowing policies, a whole host of different things. Fundamentally, what happens if I think I'm being bullied? First and foremost, acknowledge you are. The amount of time you waste wrangling with whether or not I am is really crucial time. So reframe it. I don't know whether I'm being bullied or not, right? I think I'm being bullied. I'm going to prove it one way or another. I'm going to go and seek proof. So I'm going to go in a day, and it's interesting. We always use this one. The great Drew Povey gives us this. If you suddenly decide you're going buying a BMW, every car you see on the street's a BMW. So you're actively looking for BMW. So you've got to be measured. You can't go in and actively look for these signs of being bullied, but you go in measured and you say, right, from right now, I am going to prove to myself one way or another whether or not I am.
Yes.
And what you've just given there is a great blueprint. It's fact finding. I'm going to provide myself with a series of facts over a period of time. And you know what I would put in that spreadsheet? No incidents today. Spoke to me lovely in the corridor. Didn't have, maybe come at it to prove whether or not you're being bullied. Correct. By really capturing when it doesn't happen, because you might be low, you might be going through difficult times. And actually that relationship with that person in school is actually mirroring and masking another issue that you might have going on in your life.
Yeah.
So the best piece of advice is go and find out. Yeah. Prove it one way or another with a diary or a journal.
And I think that's the absolute critical bit, isn't it? Is you're not going in to prove that you are going in terms of your evidence gathering one way or the other. I either am or I'm not. Because you're absolutely right. Go back to my example. I did put any days where I had like what most people would consider a normal day. I don't know what a normal day is without pain. But what I considered to be a normal day, I would put a line entry that says, I was okay today.
Hello, loyal listeners. It's that time in the episode when me and Sarah put out our little begging bowl and ask you to help fund our podcast. Because it's coming out of our pockets, and our kids have been living on beans on toast for months while we've been messing about pretending we're live on Loose Women. There's going to be a link in the episode notes, and it's called Buy Us a Coffee. This is your chance to help fund the podcast, give a little something back. Thank you.
Because that also then built up the pattern for me in terms of, actually, there are about 7 days a month interspersed where I can actually function, but there's 23 a month where I'm not. It will allow you to build a pattern, to build the picture. And I use this analogy all of the time about boiling frog. It's that you don't, until you start actively, not necessarily looking, but recognizing your environment and what's going on. That's the difference of the boiled frog analogy. You put the frog in the pan of water and you slowly turn the heat up until the frog is being boiled. The frog doesn't realize it's being boiled because it's not paying attention to its environment. You put a frog into a bucket of boiling water, straight out, because there's a massive change in the environment. For me, it is that you're not looking for things happening. You are being alert to when something happens and recognizing it.
And I think there's a stage beyond that as well. And this is where it's accountability for yourself. What strategies do you put in place when it does happen? So, for example, if somebody is passively aggressively making comments that are barbed that you're unhappy with, call it out. Address it. So you're not doing a secret squirrel where you compile in a fact file on this person. If somebody has said something to you that has made you feel uncomfortable, one of the best things you can do to halt them in the track is go, sorry, pardon, can you say that again? Oh. And if they've said something passively aggressively mean-spirited to you, ask them to repeat it. Really calm and really measured. Yeah, well, I was surprised you turned up on time for the briefing at 8:30. Sorry, what did you say? Pardon, can you say that again? And you'll find that the glib confidence with which they put you down, when you say, pardon, can you say that again? They never deliver it the second time with the same level of confidence, and they go, oh, I was only joking. I just meant, no, what did you say? You can start to put people right back in that transactional confidence of adult to adult communication. Something as simple as, I am stopping you in your tracks and simply asking you to repeat what you said. And if you start to do that when it happens again, you retrain them. You don't have to go, I'm not happy with the way you, because then you're hysterical and then you're hypersensitive. The best way when somebody has made you feel uncomfortable is ask them to repeat it.
Yep.
If somebody has ignored you in the corridor, you can make a choice and say, John, hiya, I said good morning. Sorry, I didn't say, John, I said good morning. And you can start to very non-combative, really, really healthy. That's not okay. And you put that on your log.
Yes.
And you slightly let them know you've become aware of it. And one of two things is going to happen then. They've either got carried away with their own power and they think they can treat you like that, or they're going to be really angry that you've called them out and they're going to amplify the behaviours. And before you know it, your critical incident will come quicker.
Correct.
So not only do you seek to gather confirmation one way or another, but when it's happening in the moment, think about strategies without necessarily addressing it head on. So say their email tone has changed, mirror it. If they've gone from signing off have a great weekend, John, to regards, John, mirror it and mirror their behaviour as well. So there are psychological things you can do to empower yourself. And they are actually quite, I'm not going to use the word easy, because if you are feeling like this about a person, it's awful, especially if you're not confrontational. But I think they're doable. It's harder to go into your head teacher and offload. It's harder to pull them up in the moment to go, do you know you've just made me feel like a bag of dirt there for what you've just done there? Sorry, can you just repeat that? Pardon, what did you say? They are some really powerful but manageable tools you can have in your bag for when you are under the cosh from somebody who, and let's face it, I don't know the psychological reason why people suddenly put someone in their crosshairs, but the chances are you're threatening them in some way. They're unhappy in an element of their life, and you are the punch bag. You threaten them, they're unhappy, or they're jealous of you. There will be something that sits with that other person that's a them problem. Okay? It's not a you problem, it's a them problem. They might be under pressure and they don't like the fact that you're main scale and you've got a life. They might be having a breakdown in their marriage that you know nothing about and you've just booked Venice for the weekend. The very sight of you triggers them for something in them. It's not your fault, I think, is what I'm trying to say.
And I think as well, just to take it to another level, that let's go back to previous episode, support plans. More often than not, what we see in the group when somebody's put on a support plan, there's been some sort of environmental change. There's been a change in leadership. There's been an Ofsted. There's been something where the decision makers are having to take some action, whether misguided or not, and certain types of people get caught in the crosshairs of that. So quite often, and we know that this is not generalization, we know this, let's just work this out. We've probably had between us individual conversations with at least 1,500 individuals in the last couple of years, based on what we know we do, sitting outside of the group. More often than not, when these people are being put on support plans, they are the type of person who actually probably does push back a little bit or does speak out, or they're expensive.
There's a couple of dig-ins there. They've been there for donkey's years. Okay?
Yeah.
They've got the respect of the staff. They've got the respect of the kids. They do things their way. They get their results. They can be a bit of a lone wolf, but it works for them. They can be somebody who's had a position of authority, come back off a maternity leave and has gone back to main scale. They can have been sat as the head of a department and they are expensive, and they're a man in the 50s or a woman in the 40s. They can be an NQT, an ECT. There's something within them that makes them vulnerable when you look across the landscape of how we want to change the staff that we've got in our school.
It still goes to, it's a them issue.
Correct.
Rather than a you issue. Now, we said it in the last episode. That does not take away from the fact that in any walk of life, any employment, there are going to be people who do need to go through a capability route at some point because something's not right. Or they have to go through a conduct route because something's not right. So
you know yourself, put your parental hat on.
Yeah.
You are sending your child to school and you know anecdotally you've got kids round the table, okay, and they're talking about a teacher that's struggling in the classroom. Now, my heart bleeds, but say you've got kids who were those kids in the class and they're like, it's out of control in that lesson, Mum. She can't control the class. She's leaving the room crying. You know it. You know there's somebody there who is struggling to perform. Don't matter whose fault it is.
Yes.
But there are people who are not capable of doing the job that they want to do, which is educate kids and make the most progress.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think if we park that reality and go to the experience of the people that we have supported and we have dealt with, because that's where we can talk from a position of fact, I would say 98% of the time it is because the person who is making a decision about what is happening with you as the person who's on the receiving end, that's their issue, quite often couched in some sort of smoke screen that hides the actual issue with them. Oh, it's capability. Is it because I've been teaching for 20 years, my results are blooming excellent, the kids are great, there's no behaviour issues in my classroom, X, Y, Z, but suddenly I'm not teaching right? Is that the issue? No, it's not. There's something else. So I think that it's a them issue, not a you issue, is really important to reflect on when you're sat there in a pool of shame, thinking that suddenly you've become the worst teacher in the world, the worst employee in the world in a different context if other people are listening. Because yes, there might be a degree of responsibility or reflection that you've got to do about yourself, but it won't be all about you.
And what else I would go back to as well is when this starts to happen in the workplace, it's very rare I come across an adult who at some point in their life cannot find a point when they were a kid that they were bullied at school. Okay? There will have been mean girls, nasty people, they've been picked on in a fight. There was a horrible lad. And what's really hard when you are going through it as a teacher and an adult or as a parent or whatever is to not feel as frightened and as helpless as you did when you were 8 years old. So sometimes we freeze in that moment because what we are facing isn't necessarily what we're facing on that corridor. We've got years of previous experiences that are making us feel as intimidated and as frightened, as helpless as we did as a kid.
Because it goes to psychological safety.
Correct.
Everything's embedded in our memory. I'm not a neurologist or anything like that, but everything's embedded in our memory. And effective leadership, an effective work environment creates a place of psychological safety. It's okay to be in that environment. It's okay to have tough conversations when you're in a psychologically safe work environment because it's not personal.
We're grown up.
Absolutely. But you're absolutely right that what will happen, and that you and I have talked about this so many times, that the word triggered, like many other words, narcissist, psychopath, sociopath, gets bandied around now in context which diminishes the reality of what that word means. When you experience a situation and your brain will go looking for similar experiences to hang on to, and it will bring that up. That's what a trigger is. And you and I are big. I put you onto it, didn't I, a couple of years ago, the chimp paradox, which I think everybody should read or listen to, depending on your preferred way. But there's real psychology about what happens in terms of your brain recognizing patterns, bringing things from deep, dark, buried memories, and then how it makes you feel. And I think it's important to recognize that.
100%, because basically what's happening is your body has gone under threat. You're in a threat response. And that's where the whole gaslighting and everything comes on. Because something's happened and it's reminded you, and your body's in threat, fight, flight. And here's the interesting one. We very often, when we feel that we're being bullied, double down and be even nicer to our bullies in order to make them go away. So there's a big conversation piece that sits outside of this. But what I would like to just bring back down now, which was some golden nuggets that's come out of this episode. The first one is, if it's not feeling right and it's not felt right for 1, 2, 3 times, stop in your tracks, listen to our words and start to reflect, because that's the first line of defense that you have. Do not dismiss this by thinking, am I being bullied? I need to now prove it within my head. Your next stage is, I am going to seek through curiosity, which is a nice neutral place to come from. I am going to seek with curiosity to understand why I am feeling like this. And that, what you outlined in keeping a record of good days, bad days, micro moments, microaggressions, how I am feeling on a day-to-day basis over a prolonged period of time, a protracted period of time, is very, very powerful. And then call it out. Ask them to repeat themselves. If they've ignored you, hi, John, did you not see me? Stand your ground and start to give a subliminal message. I see you. I see what you're doing. And I'm going to do it in a very, very non-confrontational way, but I'm on to you. And also mirror their behaviour, whether it's in the written form or if they're ignoring you. Don't seek to say good morning. Make a note of it. So I think there's some real strategies there that you can use, but one way or another, you don't have to put up with this. You might fall into one of those categories that we've talked about. I know the writing's on the wall here and I can see what's happening. And then what I always ask the people I'm supporting is, and this is the most important thing that you will ever be asked once you do go forward and once you call it out. And it's a question that I don't think you should be asked, but you will invariably be asked. And what do you want to happen? Okay? Because that puts the onus back on you. Actually, it's not up to me to decide what happens here. It's actually up to you to act upon what I say, which is always my first response. But on a deeper level, what do you want to happen? Do you want to carry on working in that workplace? Do you want to take this as a sign to say, I need to get out. I'm not putting up with this anymore. You've got to have an end game in mind, because if you are caught between the crosshairs, particularly if it's group bullying in a pack mentality, or if it is from above, what do you really want the outcome of this to be? Is it that you want a negotiated exit from this toxic environment? Is it that you want to continue working there and this be dealt with so you can get back to that peaceful serenity that you were in beforehand? Always be thinking 4 steps ahead. They're going to ask me what I want to happen as a result of this. That's on them. But what do I want? Because I'm taking back control. Because we always go back to this when it's pit pony. This, whether we like the word just or not, is just a job that leverages a lifestyle for you and your family. And if it's making you ill, go back to the original blueprint of our amazing pit pony, which is about 5 years old this week. 4 years old this week. Work out what you want. Do I need this? What do I want my life to look like? Because we've only got so many times round the sun. And you can take control. If you think, going back to the opening of our episode, what happens if I think I'm being bullied? Well, all of that. Okay?
That was a whirlwind.
100%. 100%. Was it Zamo from Grange Hill who said just say no? Was that bullying or drugs?
That was drugs, and it wasn't Zamo who said it. It was about Zamo. Oh my God, how old are we?
Zamo didn't say no, did he? That was
no, he didn't. That was the point.
All right, okay. So ignoring my reference to Grange Hill, to the issue that was nothing to do with bullying, and then the kid who didn't say just say no. they're my last garble words of wisdom.
Don't be Zammo.
Don't
That's
be
what we're
Zammo.
saying.
Don't do drugs, kids.
Words to live by. And on that note.
Yeah, and on that note, what do we know? Right, my friend, see you on the other side. Cracking episode, that. See you soon.
Tra.
Thanks for staying with us during another great episode of the Pit Pony podcast. And on behalf of myself, Sarah Dunwood, Mike Roberts at Making Digital Real, we wish you all the very best and we'll see you soon. If you wish to contact me directly for a support session or a clarity call for your next steps, please find my link in the comments below. See you soon.